Senator Reynolds in continuance.
Thank you very much, Acting Deputy President. I again rise to speak on the production tax credit bill. As I observed briefly last night, this is a typical Labor piece of legislation. It's got a catchy title, no doubt research-driven, and those opposite have spent an inordinate amount of time talking about the broader policy in very generic terms. But the fact is this is about production tax credits, and you'd think from those opposites that this one small measure alone will actually address the challenges and barriers that are now presented to and are absolutely facing our mining and oil and gas sectors. So you'd think that this will fix it all. But what they didn't actually talk about, and I don't think I heard a single Labor senator actually talk about the production tax credits. Now, they quoted a couple of people in the mining sector who are supportive of this. Well, on its own, it's not a bad policy. It will help a very few in the mining sector, but again, it doesn't address the big issues that are currently crippling new projects and, in fact, current projects, such as the nickel industry, which I will come to very shortly. So a number of people in the sector have said, well, it's better than nothing at all, but it does nothing, as I said, to fix the problem. So instead of addressing the fundamental issues that are constraining our mining sector, and in fact ones that the bill itself have made worse, this government is putting forward this attempt to say, well, we're actually dealing with the challenges that face the critical minerals and rare earth industries, which are so essential for the development of new energy technologies, or so-called net zero technologies, as if we've got a lot of them here in Australia. We've got a lot. But it's taking 15 years under this government from finding a deposit to actually producing it. Now, that is absolutely outrageous. It is ridiculous. And these commodities are actually not rare at all. There are vast deposits overseas, as President Trump has identified, in Greenland and many, many, many other nations. So what's happening? We're not competitive. Companies here can't get capital. They can't get certainty. We're now described as a sovereign risk in this nation in the mining and oil and gas sectors, and that includes for the minerals and the rare earths that are needed to get the globe to net zero. So what are those opposite doing? Well, they've introduced legislation that makes red tape even harder, even more expensive and longer. Thank goodness Nature Positive has been shelved for now, but there is nothing more certain that if those opposite are actually given the Treasury benches again after the next election, Nature Positive will be back, and it will be a further death knell for Western Australia and Australian mining and oil and gas sectors. So we oppose this bill, not because the individual tax credit will help a mere handful, into production, not into development. But this is all spin, and it doesn't do anything to benefit families, workers and the Western Australian industry. Australia has a proud and a very long manufacturing history, which this side of politics we've always supported. But what does a strong manufacturing and mining sector need? It needs strong economic management that gets our country back on track, that gets the mining sector, the oil and gas sector back on track by getting the basics right. Everything that this government, in just over 2.5 years, have made infinitely worse. So what does the sector need? They need affordable and reliable energy. It's more expensive, it's less reliable. And when you have a look at other nations who are now competing actively for our miners, for our capital and for the mining projects that could have been built here, what have they got? They've got reliable and cheap energy. Less regulation. So what have those opposite done? They have made it even worse and longer. They've added 5 years to projects being delivered. And even for the most critical of minerals, they've added 5 years. So what does that mean? It means that projects are now going overseas. Have a look at what Donald Trump has announced in terms of reducing the regulation and red tape. It's not to say that here in Australia we want lesser standards. We've got the best standards in the world. But the amount of red, green and black tape that now strangles our businesses has been exacerbated, astonishingly, in just 5 years by those opposite. So let's have a look at the critical minerals and rare earth sectors in Western Australia that this is supposedly designed to assist. A few businesses, if they're in production, will benefit from it. And that's a good thing. But again, it's putting a finger, in the dam, in the dike. So having been a passionate advocate for our critical minerals and rare earth sector for almost all of my time here in the Senate, I've consulted and engaged with the industry over many years. I've worked with them to find meaningful policy outcomes that support the critical role that they play in the prosperity of Western Australia and in the prosperity of our nation. As one of the fastest growing industries, Western Australia does, and Australia, but Western Australia in particular, does have some of the most significant critical mineral deposits in the world, including virtually all of the minerals on Australia's own critical minerals list, and is a leading supplier now of lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese, mineral sands and rare earths. We've got advanced critical minerals processing capabilities with large-scale global investment in refineries. But we could and we should be doing much more. So while critical minerals are essential for our energy transition, the sector is facing serious global challenges. And as I've said, it has taken far too long in Australia. I mean, what investor in their right mind would invest in any project in Western Australia or Australia when they know it's going to take 15 years, the regulatory environment is going to keep changing, there's going to be more and more investment, and it takes 15 years and hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to invest? We're a sovereign risk. And I can't believe I'm saying that in this place, that those opposite have made us a sovereign risk. And of course companies and investment in capital, it's incredibly mobile and it is moving. A lot of Australian companies now under the IRA, the US IRA, have now been incentivised to set up production facilities in the United States. And just this week, Meg O'Neill, the CEO of Woodside, has said that the Trump administration's early action on a deregulation and energy investment adds to the acute challenges facing Australian producers. She also urged the nation to stay focused on being competitive in global markets, pushing for an energy policy debate based on science and facts and not wishful thinking. She also said this: amid rising global protection and greater competition for capital, greater competition for global capital, Australia must sharpen its competitive edge even further. But this bill does not do that. This bill does not come within cooee of doing that. Instead, it's just a quick fix, just pre-election, for those opposite, for the Labor government to say, see, we get rare earths and critical minerals. See, we're doing this. But you're not. You're picking a few winners. You're picking a very small part of the market to help. You are not making any difference, any positive difference anyway. So let's have a look at one of the sectors, just one of the sectors, and what's happened to the nickel production here in Australia. And this is in the context of a global Cold War going on between China, Australia and our allies, and a battle that we are continuing to lose. And this is not a battle that's fought on a traditional battlefield, but in the global mining commodity markets across many commodities, and it's done differently, but commodity by commodity. And our nickel industry, so important in Western Australia, is a prime example of this battle. Significant Chinese investment has bombed the nickel market, the global nickel market. They've invested in new nickel mines and processing in Indonesia. And Indonesia has far lower costs. They've got faster regulatory timelines, they've got affordable and reliable power, and they have Chinese investment-led in structure. And our domestic market, our nickel companies did not see it coming. They didn't think that this investment could happen so fast, and they were blindsided by something that was hidden in plain sight. Now, the fact is that the nickel we produce remains significantly less emission-intensive than that in Indonesia and elsewhere. It is cleaner, demonstrably cleaner, but it is more expensive. So our market share has now plummeted from 16% of the global market to just 4% today, and it is dropping. And BHP's announcement to suspend its Nickel West operations in the goldfields highlights the consequence of this battle. So China's systematic manipulation of global commodity markets, not just in the nickel market but in many others. They do this through subsidies, export restrictions and strategic stockpiling, have undermined the markets, and yet we are doing nothing to combat that, to assist our own companies. So in conclusion, it is a really sad indictment of this government, but sadly we've seen so many other examples in this place. It's all about perception and politics and spin, rather than about any genuine attempt to support our mining and oil and gas sectors. And as a West Australian, that breaks my heart, because we can see in Western Australia 15 years is far too long. People are just not going to invest anymore because there are plenty of other markets where they can get the commodities faster, cheaper and more reliably than Australia. And that is a shame, because we still have the best environmentally sustainable standards. We are slavery-free. We do have mine rehabilitation, and our product is traceable. But again, we are doing nothing in this country and nothing in this bill to save those industries and to prop up our economy.